Now, there have been many people who I've talked with that have seen the other side, and growing up as a Christian and transitioning to atheism, I've always been quite skeptical of all the existence. In fact, when I was 6 years old, I watched a show about Santa Claus and how fast he'd have to go around the world in order to deliver presents from house to house, and the number was absurd. The number of houses per second Santa had to visit in order to give all the children in the world presents. Now, I just thought about that visually. I was like, wait a minute, like how can a sled go that fast? And so when I was 6, I very quickly figured out, oh, okay, this is Santa Claus is false, it's fake, it's a child's story. And then I applied the same type of logic and reasoning to God. You see, I grew up surrounded by a community of people who believed in God, yet after Santa Claus was false, I aimed the gun at God. I was like, maybe God isn't real too. And so then my logic was just really simple. It was just like, well, God creating the universe makes no sense because something had to create God. Of course. Now, in the world we exist within, we have events, we have causes, and then the results of those causes, and our mind is somewhere in that land where it's able to direct what is caused and what isn't. Although in truth, if you look all around you, there's so much going on, there's so much life. And so a single person can direct the flow of energy. But that in itself is a small little bit. Now, if everything around it, like a calm pond, is still, one ripple will go everywhere. And currently, in the predicament that we are in as a generation, we see that the world around us is far from optimal. Many people getting depressed, suicidal. We've lost lots of people. I know in my generation, I've known people who have lost their lives. I myself have attempted once and died for 7 minutes, and it's a miracle I'm even here, able to talk. But I've learned so much in just such a little amount of time, and I did this circle where I started with God, left God, and then came back. And now, because I've been so skeptical my entire life, I have found this great source of just love and power, and it overwhelms me. It overtakes me, and I really want people who are especially skeptics to at least open up to the possibility of God. Now, I've written a book, and the book has had some interesting reviews. It's regarding existence, and it answers the most fundamental of questions, like why are we here and how did we get here? And even in the book, there's a full circle, because I start off with like planks. Like, imagine you're building a house, right? You start off with the planks, and then you get the nails, and then you nail the planks together to some beams, and you make sure everything is well ordered and structured. And of course, that's oversimplified, but you get the idea. You build from the bottom up, just idea after idea, and usually you want to start with something that everyone agrees with. And when I applied this method, I very quickly found myself in a realm that was able to explain some of the most extreme things in the universe, at least for me. See, I can find a way of understanding things that make sense to me. But what makes sense to me is not necessarily going to make sense to another. And if you think about it, the mind is conditioned since birth. Arguably before then, if you look into reincarnation, which you will look into later. But for now, just consider what's in your immediate environment. Instead of asking the question, what's in the environment now, let's shift. Let's pretend we could take a helicopter, right? A little helicopter that has a camera on it. And temporarily, you're able to go off to the side And now you're able to see yourself from a third-person perspective. So from that perspective, I see a camera and a microphone aimed at me, and I'm just talking to it. Now, that is an imaginary perspective, because I don't necessarily know that what I'm imagining is exactly what is there. So it's just a matter of faith. Is that true or not? But that's beside the point. What I really want to get at is when you look at when you are the helicopter and you're looking in, you look at the eyes of the person, right? And then you ask the question, what's perceiving that image? So in order to answer that question, we have to consider the information, how it got there. So we're going to skip the beginnings. We'll get to that later. But energy from the sun comes to us in the form of photons. And what we see is a tiny, tiny part of the spectrum called the visible light spectrum. And everything that we observe is somehow related to that spectrum. It's all a frequency, an energy on that spectrum. So what happens is if the energy goes from the sun, right, hits the ground, hits the leaf, hits the walls, wherever you may be, there's just this massive cluster, this massive nest of photons, and then it ends up, hits your retina, right, goes to your brain, does a loop-de-loop. And then what? So the brain renders the information, but at what point is that information perceived, observed? And so if your perspective of the universe is merely physical, like only physical things exist, you're going to run into some problems. You're not going to really be able to answer that question. But if we look at the helicopter perspective, we see that that film which we are looking from, you can't point anywhere in the brain and say that that's where it's being observed. Because if I point to this eye, let's say I'm observing reality from right here, a little point. Okay, but then that means I'm only able to receive just that point of information. I'm receiving all these points across fundamentally a two-dimensional sheet, like a baking tray, and we only see the bottom of the tray. When I stick my hand out, there's the impression of the third dimension. But we don't know there's a third dimension. I mean, it looks like it. There could be an excellent, an amazing, transcendent artist behind all of this that is painting reality such that this is merely a two-dimensional projection. And the hand that comes out is an effect of shadowing, an effect of stuff that happens behind the eyelid, so to speak. So when we try to answer the question again, where are we perceiving that information? Nowhere local. So non-local is where we perceive from. And so non-locality, I'm going to try to stay out of quantum mechanics. I'm going to be honest, because as someone who's gone through the processes of becoming a scientist, I could say that until I have studied, until I have gone into the math itself, I cannot truly say that I understand it. But for now, I will say this, is that I have found ideas that are parallel to it, that resolve many questions of existence. So, non-locality, what does that mean? Well, first let's define locality, like a location. You can go anywhere you want in the world, or the sun, or you can go out to the heliosphere, way past the Kuiper belt, where comets exist, like well past there. And out there, you're just in this fathomless emptiness, this great space. Nowhere in there is there not a point. There's always points you can point at. A point is the zero-dimensional object, right? So you can take that zero and you can put anywhere you want to. So that's locality. It's a point somewhere. Non-locality means not a point. It's not in this space. It's outside of the space. Now, space is related to time, and there's very simple physics equations for that. Distance is related to the rate times the duration of that rate. So distance is rate times time. And so in this world of physics, we explore the concept of entanglement, how two particles can, in zero time, instantaneously correlate. That what is caused unto one particle is also simultaneously caused unto another. Yet they're divided. They could theoretically be divided by the distance of the universe. So many, many billion light years. It doesn't matter how far those points are. Instantaneously, the two connect. So when you have that, somehow there's a connection in non-locality. It's like beyond the physical, but beyond space, beyond time, right? There's this non-local space. And scientists, frankly, don't really know, and to be honest, myself, I can only draw assumptions of what that state could be. But if we consider the point as just a 0 point, a lot of things begin to make sense. Now, let us consider the beginnings, the very beginnings. And so, of course, it's like I wasn't, at least that I know of, I wasn't there. I can't say I wasn't there because I don't know that. But I could say that in the present, right now, from what I can think and observe and feel, I can't confidently tell you what was there. But if there's an unknown in a system, that doesn't mean you can't work with it. You can work with it, just if it's unknown, you have less insight. But you could still gain some surface insight. Some might consider it deep, but really it's simplicity. And so I'll show you. I'll show you with some sticks. Okay, so imagine this right here is the very beginning of everything. Just this line in time. From here, the Big Bang or whatever, God, whatever caused it. That was an explosion of energy that went outwards. So here we're at 0 time. And then here, we are 1 unit of time ahead of that. Because this led to this event. So this led to the expansion of space and time. And from what scientists have been able to think of, Max Planck discovered what is known as Planck's constant. And from that you can get Planck time and Planck distance. And so what Planck time is how long does it take for a photon to travel 1 Planck distance? And it's on the order of 10 to the minus 44 or something. You could probably correct me because it's been a long time since I looked over those constants. But the fact of the matter is that you can break space and time up into tiny, tiny, infinitesimal points. So we use this concept where this is the beginning, and then this was 1 unit or 1 Planck time after. And then this led to that led to that, which led to that. And you keep going down this line, or at least apparently a line. Now, when I go with this metaphor, this stick, I'm going to keep it perpendicular to this one for a very specific reason, which you'll see. Okay. So, first you have to define the law of causality. And everyone could agree with it, that for every cause there's an effect. I'm not going to define necessarily what type of time there's involved, because causality is beyond time itself, because time had to be caused by something. So there's something out there that caused time, or the illusion thereof, whatever. There's still flow, there's still change, which is all related to time. So this, then, something caused this. So then we say, okay, well, for every cause there's an effect, which means this thing even is an effect of something deeper, further back. So then we go 1 step backwards. So this is our original 0 point, and now we're 1 point behind. Now, you ask the question again, what caused this, right? What caused this? Well, it was whatever was before that. So we keep going backwards, 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 backwards. And at a certain point, things stop making sense. It's like, well, I can go back forever, and I could keep going forever, forever, and I would never hit the end. But if that's true, then everything here wouldn't even exist. Not an illusion nor reality. It just wouldn't even be here. So somewhere along the line, we have to say this, that there is a cause such that the cause is itself. So instead of this leading to this, leading to that, leading to that, you have this thing which is cycling in on itself. It's spinning, causing itself. It's like the snake, the Ouroboros, biting its tail, consuming itself infinitely, in a sense. And in this process of turning, it is creating. And it is creating, at the very least we know of, this universe. In philosophy, it's known as the cause unto itself. And unfortunately, in academia, there's no heavy requirement in philosophy, but I believe philosophy should be taught to budding scientists simply because it gives them a way of thinking about things that lets us move beyond asking fundamental questions that we should already have the answers to, but simply have ignored. It's very understandable, though. Ever since scientists were burned at the stake, the 14th, 15th, 16th centuries, and beyond, scientists were so persecuted. There's been this movement of just anger and resentment. It's especially resentment against religion. If you want to attack someone, you go for their core. So if you're attacking religion because your friend just got burnt at the stake, you go straight for God. No question about it. You go straight for that, and you disprove it. And there are many scientists that have this energy. I use it for fun. I like it. It's useful. It's like a very sharp knife. You can pierce through things. You can go through things, and you can find different truths. So there's this resentment, and it's led to this belief that, oh, God is a fairy tale, like Santa Claus, like I was talking about earlier. But no, it's not that. When we consider God, they think, oh, a fairy tale made the universe. And it's like, no, it's whatever caused the Big Bang, and whatever caused the cause of the Big Bang, whatever is cyclically causing everything, caused not only space, it caused not only time, it caused the stuff that existed before space and time, this primordial soup of sorts, that is non-local. And so then you get into the realm of non-local causality. Causality of non-local things, things which are fundamentally non-physical. And so that, right now in the present moment, we are connected to the very source of all creation. Right now, in the present. That is within us. The physical world on the outside is operating kind of like a Rube Goldberg machine, right? Where one thing leads to another. But simultaneously, there's something that's orthogonal or perpendicular to all of that, that can spontaneously redirect the flow of energy, like a logic gate within the brain. Now, the brain is, from what we know, is one of the most advanced systems in the universe. If there's extraterrestrials, which there probably are, you'll find that there's a high likelihood there's something more advanced than our brain. But for now, brain is the most advanced thing we know of in the universe. Sophisticated, at least. And it's truly a miracle how, despite there being a physical universe, despite there being all this stuff around us that's just happening, there's this little spark within us that can very temporarily, very spontaneously, is what I would use, violate the second law of thermodynamics. The second law of thermodynamics states, that's important, in a closed system, the chaos, the entropy is always going, or at least it tends towards disorder. Entropy is increasing. So mathematically, you write that as ds is greater than 0. So the change in entropy is greater than 0. It's always increasing. I say that that's the law of nature. Now, something caused nature. Like, it's not just like nature magically popped out of nowhere and boom, there you go, space-time. No. Instead, you have causality which relates to non-physical things. And there, I believe, is a good point to stop for now. I think we have to consider that within us there's this non-physical source. And with this non-physical source, we have a tremendous amount of power, so much power, that if we group together and we use these principles, we can do whatever we wanted, anything, so long as we have faith in ourselves, faith in whatever can spontaneously violate the second law of thermodynamics. We have faith in our highest form of self. And persistence. You can have all the faith in the world, but if you're not working for the goal, what's going to be done? What work is there going to be done? Work is force cross distance. Force applied over a distance. So you have the force within you, right? It's like a Star Wars idea. But you have to cross the distance. You have to persist through that distance.